Hello everyone and welcome to this live stream. Now, we've not done one of these before, so this is kind of interesting, and we really appreciate your feedback as to how this works out, if this is a good format for you, if it's working technically for you, so let us know. Now, if you've got any questions at any time, you can ask them in the live chat, which is on the right side of the screen. If you're just watching this as a recording later, you obviously can't ask any questions, but always feel free to get in touch, email us, visit us on the forum, talk to us on Twitter, and come along and get involved and get using Quirkos. So what we're going to do today is basically create a new project, take you through the basics of using Quirkos for the first time, and some of the ways that you can analyze and explore your qualitative data. So the very first thing that we're going to do here is just show you around. This is the screen that appears the first time you set up Quirkos and run it. And this basically gives you a list of the previous files that you've used. But what I'm going to do here is create a new project with this button on the bottom right side of the screen. Now, a Quirkos project is created by a particular person, so you've got this space here for author, but you can put in anything you like here. You've got options to password protect the file if you want, and also to make it a structured questions project. Now, that's usually used if you're importing survey data from Excel or from an online platform like SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics, and that means that you're basically asking the same questions to each of the different respondents. But for this example, we're going to use some semi-structured interviews, so we've got no need to have this structured questions setting, and I'm just going to leave that blank and create the new project. Now, the next thing you'll see here is the kind of standard file dialog, and what this means is that you can put basically the file anywhere you like, and Quirkos saves all of your project data in one file, and you can email it to yourself, you can keep it on a USB stick, send it to share with colleagues and friends, no problem. So I'm just going to call this referendum project. Because this is going to be talking about attitudes to the Scottish referendum of independence. Now, this is a qualitative study that we did a couple of years ago, and actually if you go to our website, you'll find online the complete sources of data that we're going to use in this example. So I'll just show you here. If I bring up the file here, you'll see, so this is our website. And if you go to learn and then workshops and events, now we run training workshops using these data settings. So in fact, if you go to manual and materials here, you'll see some useful things to get started. So some manuals, PowerPoint presentations, but here you'll also see workshop and example materials. And here is the interviews on the Scottish referendum. Now, these are real interviews that we had transcribed with people. You can see the word files of them here. And we've got consent to share them in an anonymized format for running these workshops and for use in training. And this is a great way to play with some data before your own data is ready and get to learn the software. Now, you can also cheat and look at examples of actual coded work that we've done here. So you can see how I've been through and analyzed it. And you can also get some reports which we've generated using the project. So you can see here's some of the outputs, and this is how we used Quirkos for understanding what people were talking about in the Scottish referendum. So what we're going to do is use this button here at the bottom left, right of the screen to bring in some sources of data. Now, Quirkos only supports plain text, but these can be text files, Word files, PDF files, or spreadsheet files. And what I'm going to do here is just choose select a file, and then this brings up a dialog which allows us to choose the file we want. And I've downloaded all of these referendum files here, so I can choose, let's go with Julie. Let's choose Julie's project file there. So here you can see a little preview, so yeah, that looks good. That's basically the text from the Word document. And if I click import now, you'll see this has brought this in, and here's the text in the scrollable right side of the screen, and this is the whole transcript of the interview with Julie. Now you'll see at the moment this is called source 1, but what I can do is I can describe it in some different ways. So if I go to this button here, at the top right, that's the source properties, and that allows us to define the sources in different ways. So first of all, we can change the title straight away to Julie. So now we know that that belongs to Julie. But we can also add any other kind of properties that help us describe the data. So this is where you might put in things like demographic data, like age and location or gender. So let's put in a property here called age, and we'll give Julie the value 32. So now we've created a new category called age, which will go across all of the sources, and this value for the property called 32. And we can drop and change that at any time. So if we decide, no, she lied, it's actually 33, we can just change that with this drop down box here and putting in a new value. And any other values that we've entered before are remembered in here, so it's easy to go back and change to them. So we'll just put one other one here as well. We'll put location, and Julie can be from the fair city of Edinburgh. Great. Now that's looking good, so I can close this now. And basically what that means is the computer now knows that this source is called Julie, and that's easiest for us to find here, and also that Julie is 32 years old and located in Edinburgh. So let's bring in just one more source of text for now. I'm going to click on the plus button, again select a file. You'll see there's some other options here. You can create a new blank source if you wanted to create notes and memos in here to edit in there. So let's try that. We can edit in here and put in some notes. And the advantage of doing it in this way is that you can code and include in your analysis your notes or turn them off if you don't want to see them later. So again, I'm just going to go to the source properties here, change this to memos. So that's called memos. Don't need to change anything else. I might just create a new property which is called memo. So that way I can see which sources are my memo sources and which sources are from my real sources of data. And in the same way you could put in PDFs, you could put in document analysis, you could put in journal articles, and you could code those against what you're discovering in your text. So it's a good way to kind of compare and contrast your data with the kind of discourse and theory. So I'm going to bring in again one more source of file. You'll see again there's another couple of options here, so you can copy and paste files, you can bring in spreadsheet data, you can bring in a whole folder of files at one go as well. But I'm just going to bring in just one more file here, the referendum project, and we'll take James. Let's take James's data. So it gives us a little preview there. We click import and in it goes. So James's data has got in there too. So I'm just going to click on this button here, and now I can change the source properties for James's source. So first of all, I'm going to change that to say James. Then I'm going to say, well, he's a different age, he's going to be 42. And I could just select him here as being located in Edinburgh, but I'm actually going to put a new value in here and put in Glasgow. And this is not a memo, so I don't need to put in a value for that. Great. So now we can see we've defined two sources and a memo source in here in which we can type. And if you wanted to type in here at any stage, just right click, keep your notes in one place. Right. So let's get on with some of the analysis. Now we could put in much more sources of data, but just for now I'm just going to bring in those two sources. So what we want to do now is we can either kind of create a coding framework in advance. So this area here on the left side of the screen, this is going to take the themes or the nodes. These are the kind of topics of interest. We can create those in advance, or we can create them on the fly as we go along if we're doing some kind of grounded theory analysis. So just by clicking on the plus button here, which is on the top right of the canvas view side of the screen, we'll create a new bubble. Now these bubbles are called quirks in our software. They'd be called nodes or themes in other software. And basically we can use those to keep track of little bits of data that we're interested in. So this first one, let's call this referendum, fairly obvious category. And we can put in a longer description here. And by clicking on this, we can choose a colour. We've got lots of different colours to choose from. It's Scottish and blue. I think we'll choose some kind of shade of blue like that. Maybe it won't show up very well. No, it looks okay. So now we have this bubble, which has just been put on a random place in the canvas. And I can drag and drop and move this around and choose where I want that to appear on the screen. So I can start grouping and clustering things together. So let me create one more here, which I'm going to call wording. So this was how the question was going to be worded. Because at the time there was a lot of debate about the very specific wording for the referendum and exactly what people would be asked to decide about. So actually I think this is probably something that's very closely related to the referendum. In fact, it should be a subcategory of it. Now I can create a subcategory just by dragging and dropping one bubble onto the other. So to make wording a subcategory of referendum, I just drag the wording bubble onto the referendum bubble. And you see that it's now nested and clustered in there. And if we wanted to have other aspects in here, so the timing was another issue about when the referendum would be, I can just drag it onto that. And so now I've created these subcategories here. You'll see how easy it is to create new themes and topics. And with this dialog here, I can even zoom in and just make this a little bigger. Now it's useful to be zoomed out when you've got lots of different themes, but I don't have very many here, so I'm just going to leave that as is. Now you can also create a bubble by right-clicking at any point on the canvas, add quirk here, and we can put in another one, so maybe attitudes. Something a bit different. Now I've got that bubble as well. So now if I want to go through and actually start doing some coding, all I have to do is choose one of my sources on the right, which I have Julie's open here, select a piece of text that's of interest. So yeah, this person's talking here about the referendum, and then I drag and drop that text onto the referendum bubble. And you see now that's been coded, and it's become color coded with the color that we chose for referendum, so it's easy to spot where that is. Now you'll see here someone is talking about the wording and whether that skewed people. So we'll select all of that text there, probably shouldn't have quite that much, and drag and drop that onto the wording bubble. And so now you see there's a nice big highlight there. But I might say that some of this is also about referendum, and that's totally fine, because we can have things coded as to more than one item. And what you'll see has happened here is now we've done a little bit of coding. The size of the bubbles is showing you the proportion of coding which has gone into each bubble. So referendum is the one that we've coded most, in that there's two things in here so far, two sections here. And the wording bubble is slightly smaller, as that's got one piece of coded text on it. The other two bubbles at the moment don't have anything. But if I said that this was about attitudes, then that would increase in size as well. So you get this kind of sense of what's emerging from your data as you code. And if at any stage you can't remember what these strips represent here, what the colors were, just have a look on the bottom left of the screen, and that shows there exactly what the theme was. And you can also remove a piece of coding at any time, either with the undo and redo buttons if it was the last thing that you did. But if you want to do that later on, you can just right click here on one of the highlights, remove highlight, and then that piece of text has been uncoded. And everything has undo and redo capability in Quirkos, so don't worry about changing your mind as you go along. You'll also notice that there's no save button, and that's also because Quirkos is constantly saving your file every time you do an action. So that means you won't lose any data. But if you did want to get a snapshot of your data at a particular stage in time, you'll need to click on the project button and then use the save as to create a duplicate file. So We've done a little bit of coding here in Julie's. Let's go to James and let's do a little bit of coding in here. So this is about the referendum. Heard 2 years in advance that it was going to happen. So I'm going to drag and drop that onto the referendum bubble. I have these ridiculously large so you can see them, but it's looking fine. And this is about attitudes, I suppose, discourse and debate and distraction, so I can drag and drop that on there. But in fact, this is about something else. This is about Scottish politics. So what if I want to create a category for that? Well, I can actually drag and drop a piece of text onto the plus button, and that will create a new bubble with that text already in it. So if I call this Scottish politics, now somewhere in my canvas, there it is. We've got a new bubble called Scottish politics. So if you want to create some text on the fly, you can keep going and add a new quirk in that way. Now, probably this is the way that you'll work with most of your data. You'll go through, do a very close reading, deciding what this is about, and dragging and dropping. So it's quite a long, slow process. But there are a couple of things which can help that process out. And obviously the first of these is that there is a text search here. So if I wanted to search for something like, let's put in wording. Let's see what comes up for that. Okay, so James and Julie have both talked about wording. Now we've already coded some of Julie's text, but she's talking about it here as well. And with these little dot 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 buttons, I can actually load and show more of the source around it. So not just the word, which is highlighted and underlined there. And this section is about wording, so I can drag and drop straight from the search results onto the bubble. And because that's a subcategory, I have to put it on the parent first, don't let go, wait for the other bubbles to pop out, and then drag it on there. So I've added some more text to wording. You'll see there's also some other options here. So there's a synonyms database here. So that's a good point. This phrasing might be another word that people use. And choice of words, diction, phraseology, verbiage, those aren't really relevant to what I want to search. But I can do a search now for those other terms. No, nobody used the phrase phrasing, but if they had, that would come up there. There's also various options here to look for alternative endings, whole words, and only look through the coded text. You can also refine your results, so you can see results just from people who have a particular age, or just results from people who came from Edinburgh. So there's lots of different solutions there in the search results. So I'm going to close that for now. So what I want to do now is just have a look, see what the coding that I've done. And if I want to see everything which is under one of the themes, I can just double click on referendum, for example. And that shows us everything that's on referendum and its subcategories here, wording and timing. So on the right now we can see everything which is about referendum, wording and timing. And if I just want to see the results just from wording or just referendum, then I can just click on those ones. That shows me those on the right. Now you can also, with these buttons here, select all of the extracts, copy them, and then put them into something like Word. So create a new blank document. Yeah, so I can put those quotes if they're useful into Word. And you can do that from most of the results that you'll see here, including the text results here. So I could copy all of the text results here for wording and put those straight into Word. Okay, so what we're going to do now is cheat a little bit. These are the basics of coding in Quirkos, but I want to show you some of the ways you can explore and analyze them. So what I'm going to do now is actually open that project which I had where I've already coded this. This is a big project now, so this has got 15 fairly long interviews here. They're about at least an hour each, and I think there's about 50 or 60,000 words in this project. And you can see here I've got this huge canvas with all these different sources of interest here. So I've got general politics, Westminster politics, last general election, the 2015 election, should be updated now with our most recent election, and we can reanalyze that data. It would be very interesting. And you see here in referendum I also have wording, when people first heard of it. So if I want to see every time people have talked about first hearing about the referendum, I can just double click on that bubble. Now on the right, this is everything that all of the people in the project said about when they first heard that there was going to be a referendum. So I went through and coded all of those, and now I can have a look at them. But one of the interesting things that we can do with Quirkos is actually see what kind of connections and correlations there are. So for example, I created these very broad categories, positive and negative, and it's possible to look and see what things were coded at the same time, so what connections there were between these topics. Now, if I want to have a look at that, I can right click on any of the bubbles here, choose the Show Overlap view, and this shows me basically a sort of Venn diagram where the bubbles here which are closest to the center are the ones which overlap most. So people have the most positive things to say about the SNP, that's the Scottish National Party. So if I click on that, I can see on the right now every time someone said something positive about the SNP. And I can also see that people were also very positive about the referendum in general, so people had a positive impact on that. And the further out we go, the less of a correlation there is. So hovering over that, we can see there's 44 things that overlap, with the SNP being positive, but for the Labour Party, which is another political party here, there's only 12 overlapping sections of text which were positive. So that could be quite an interesting finding itself, and it would be worth, again, not just relying on the numbers, but going back to the qualitative text, reading what that actually says and seeing if that is a significant thing across lots of different sources. So I can see here Adrian, Alistair, anyone else? Helen, they're saying positive things about Labour. So I can go back with the home button at the top left of the screen to see my sources again. But what I want to do now is go back and show you, if you remember earlier we used these source properties to define the categories that we have here. So we've got gender, occupation, and how they voted, whether they voted yes for referendum or no for the referendum. And what I can do here is use these to run queries. This button on the left of the screen, you'll see there's a query view, and that will show me if I want to see, just like this, everything that the women said in the query. Gender here equals female. And you'll see that, so it says that the women are saying mostly negative things, but that might be a factor, of course, that I coded more things about being negative than any other category. And now I can see these on the right is now just all the negative things said by women. But to get some sense of whether that's relevant or not, we should probably compare that. So we can also show at the same time a query for gender equals male. And if I update that, we'll now see all the negative things by women on the left and the negative things said by men on the right. And now we can see that actually there's probably not a lot of difference in the tone. There's a broadly similar number of negative and positive things. You can see they've been put close together. It's interesting that men are saying a lot more things than women about the SNP. So I'm not sure whether that's relevant, but it'll be interesting to look at. So now I can click and I can read side by side the different comments from the men and the women. And I can make this much more complicated if I like. So if I only want to see the women who voted yes for independence, then I can do exactly that query there. So you can make these queries more and more complicated if you like. And you can also produce reports here, and the reports show you a kind of overview of the whole project and then just the results from your query that you ran. So you can get a report just with the results from the women or from the men who voted yes in this example. So I'm just going to click back to the home button. So another neat thing that people like is the word export. So another way to share the data if you've coded it with someone, especially if they don't have the software themselves, is to use the Word document export. And what this will do is create a Word document of all of your transcripts, but using the color codes that you chose to show how you coded that. So we'll just call this Word export example. Now this will create here, just close that one we made earlier, Now we've got a color code using the comments feature in Word. We've got a color-coded and annotated transcript. So these are all the transcripts from the projects. This is a huge file. Yeah, it's nearly 60,000 words. And it's still not managed to count how many pages it is. That's how much Word is struggling with this document. But it's creating here color-coded highlights which show how we've coded that, and also who did the coding in the project as well. So if you've got multiple people working on the project, you can see who did that work. And there's various different ways that you can change the view here in the different sections. In the review sections, I'm sorry, to change how that's formatted. So that's quite a useful way to get the data out. You can also export a Excel file, essentially a CSV file, which you can open in any spreadsheet software, even SPSS or R, to do quantitative statistical analysis. And you can also generate reports, and these show you a lot more detail about the project. I'm not going to go into those too much in this video. This is all I really wanted to cover today, just to give you a very kind of general overview of working with Quirkos, doing your analysis, some ways to explore the data, and then going back and producing some of these exports. So I'm just going to check to see if anyone has any questions in the live chat. And if not, we'll sign off for the day. Doesn't look like there's any questions waiting. So do let us know how this went for you, if this was useful. You can go to our website directly to download a free trial. So if I go to quirkos.com, you can download even from the home page for Windows, Mac or Linux. And it's a 1 month free trial with the full version of the software, so you can see how that works out for you. Now, if you need any help at any stage, we've also got a forum online, but you can also email us directly, call us on Skype, ask any questions on Twitter. Our Twitter feed is usually quite busy, so we do check that every day. Let's have a look and see what's on there now. So if you've got any support questions, it's all about the live workshop, of course. So if you've got anything you want to ask, do get in touch. And we really hope that Quirkos provides an easy to use and intuitive way to explore your qualitative data. Thanks for dropping in.